Welcome to the third in a series of special NRF Big Show episodes of The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. First up in this episode, TechStyle Fashion Group President, Global Fashion Brands Laura Joukovski is my guest. Reflecting on her work overseeing JustFab, ShoeDazzle FabKids, working with celebrities like Kate Hudson and Rihanna, we talk about the nature of celebrity-based brands, working with global influencers, and solving the attribution riddle. Speaking of influencers, Canadian global influencer, supermodel, entrepreneur Coco Rocha joins me for a quick but super interesting interview, sharing insights into her tradecraft. Last but certainly not least, Manolo Almagro from Q Division and co-host of the most excellent podcast, Q's Tech Talks, is back on the podcast as my guest. We talk retail tech, starting with the CES show and why retailers need to be there, then explore the trends on the show floor at NRF and beyond. But first, let's listen to my conversation live from NRF with Laura from JustFab Textile. Laura, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, here in the big show, NRF, New York, and you and I have something in common. We were just talking about we both worked for Levi Strauss at one time, so that's
Once upon a time.
That's a fun connection point.
Yes.
Listen, tell us a little bit. I want to get more into the organization you work for and your kind of value proposition, but first of all, tell me a little bit about your personal and professional journey. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So I've been focusing on consumer-facing businesses for many years now. I did once upon a time have a brief stint at Levi's, and since then worked at a small children's company called T Collection in San Francisco. Following that, went on to found FabKids, which is another children's business, which got purchased by JustFab at the time, which later became TechStyle Fashion Group. So
Right.
I've been with Adam and Don, our co-CEOs at TechStyle Fashion Group since 2013.
And tell me about the group. You got a lot of businesses that
Sure.
make up and roll up into the organization, and you've got a couple of different business models and lots of interesting things to talk about influencers and the way you go to market and the fashion business. But just give us, for listeners who may not be as familiar, just give us kind of the overview of what the business is and how you go to market.
Thanks, absolutely. So TechStyle is a portfolio of 5 different brands. So we have Fabletics, which is an activewear brand that we launched in 2013 with Kate Hudson. We have JustFab and ShoeDazzle that are both shoe businesses primarily, with some fashion associated with the shoes, some apparel. We have a children's business, FabKids. That was my baby once upon a time, still within the portfolio. And most recently, we launched a lingerie brand in partnership with Rihanna called Savage X Fenty.
Right, so some names people would be familiar with. And so you play in that kind of luxury, not luxury, but you've got famous people attaching themselves to apparel and brands. That's an interesting way to go to market. What's the key success factor for that? There must be both the great product and also the name come together to make greater than the sum of its parts, right? 1 + 1 = 3. Is that the kind of
wow? You totally just nailed it. That pretty much is it. Yeah. So it's I think these partnerships, and we've done many across the full spectrum of influencers. These partnerships work best. They sort of get you an opportunity to get discovered, to get introduced, and then you really have to show up with great product, right? So when we do these partnerships, it helps us get noticed. But we grow our brands by having great product and great brands.
So the big name brand gets you to the front door, at least as we would say in the funnel. It gets you at least consideration.
Sure.
And it kind of gets you into that kind of their group of the people themselves, right?
That's right.
So
Make it into the consideration set.
Right?
That's it. The celeb connections can be an important part of sort of gaining access to consideration.
I had some experience with it. I was with the Shopping Channel, which is like a QVC for 7 years.
Yeah.
And you would see the celeb brands kind of come and go. And what seemed to distinguish successful from not successful is, first of all, the product's got to be fantastic. It's got to have its own kind of features and benefits and be different. But some celebs are just better at it. They get the business better than others. And is that your experience too? Someone said, listen, I attach my name to the brand, I'm done. That'll be good enough. Others know they've got to work a lot harder to make that successful in cooperation with, their vendor partner, as we would call you, right? Or their retail partner. Is that your experience as well?
Well, I think there's we have lots of different experiences in this area. So when you think about sort of the businesses that we've done in which we attach ourselves to really big names, the Kate Hudson or the work that we've done with Rihanna, those are really deep. We're launching brands with these people.
Right.
Kate Hudson was a co-founder. Rihanna is the founder of Savage X Fenty.
And they arrive with their own vision as well, right?
They arrive with their own vision as well. And so it's sort of this is not a flash in the pan sponsorship. We're building businesses together. We do a lot of other deals and a lot of other work with influencers across the full spectrum, and some collaborations with folks, even within the Fabletics brand, within the seven, across all of our brands.
Yeah. I saw that on the shoes, some lines that are specific.
Sure.
I guess it's like a spectrum, right? You get the full-on owned celebrity brands to the an influencer line attached to the brand, all the way to just using influencers for the standard business, right? It's kind of a full spectrum.
It's the full spectrum, right? And I think even in the brands that we've done, where there is a household name associated and attached, we still do a lot of partnerships and a lot of sort of building of brand ambassador relationships to support and expand the audience and the content creation engine for those brands.
So a lot of challenges, not challenges, but a lot of change going on, better said, in the apparel business, right? So, fast fashion, it looks like it's on a bit of a decline, certainly Forever 21. It had its own issues, but fast fashion is being maybe taken over some of the froth with sustainability kind of focuses, with the reuse, with the resell. And then there's subscription boxes and subscription services and loyalty. You guys play in that kind of space. I just want to get your view of how you see apparel this year and kind of rolling out as the industry starts to change and morph, and kind of what your role is in all that change.
Sure. I think businesses that are doing the best job out there are really paying attention to what people want, right? It's sustainability is obviously a big and important trend, and so we've got to pay attention to what that means and how that changes the small and big ways we show up as a brand.
Right.
And broadly speaking, sustainability trend aside, broadly speaking, I think the brands that are going to win and survive are taking that work seriously, are taking seriously the work of really dialing in and listening to what people want, and giving them what they want. There's lots of signals out there. There's powerful tools that are present and emerging, lots of innovation to help businesses be in better relationship with their customers and understand what it is that meets people's needs. And the businesses that are going to win are paying real close attention, real close attention to meeting those needs.
Well, let's dip a bit, pivot off that. You take a bit into your background. You do have some media mix modeling, media measurement. How do you measure that media? What's your advice to retailers?
Oh, sure.
So, you've got some experience in trying to figure out what's working and what's driving it, tied into influencers. How do you measure their success? What would your advice to retailers about understanding that attribution riddle or whatever we want to call it?
It is quite a riddle. I don't think. I think my general advice is this: there's not a static answer. So what's happening is there's always a lot of signals that you can measure. So you pay close attention to what is the metric you're trying to move. Are you trying to get new customers? Are you trying to drive sales? Are you trying to build awareness and consideration? Are you trying to get visits to your website? What is the metric you're trying to move? And then you get experimental around testing what moves it, right? And the more you can dimensionalize the efforts that you're making to understand what is it about certain ads or certain media buys that really move it, the more you can dimensionalize those things and try to draw a correlation between the advertising and the response you're looking for. I think that the people who are out there doing great work there's not a static answer. There's always an evolution around the richness and fullness of the data you can look at, and how you can build those relationships to try to understand causality.
I think it's great advice. Don't try to understand everything all at once, and basically try to understand each objective and what's moving it. So let's just dovetail into understanding the impact of influencers,
sure,
and how to measure what influencers do and what they kind of bring to each of the brand. Is that your approach? Is kind of look for those as you call it, signals, right? Look for those signals. Some probably a little more obvious than other. When you're dealing with Kate Hudson, there's kind of big, broad signals, but others on the micro are influencers. How do you get your head around that?
Sure. So I think there's we think about what is the give and take of any of those relationships? And so when we think about the value for us as an advertiser and as a business in engaging and building and fostering and cultivating these relationships, we're looking for content creation and we're looking for audience reach fundamentally. And and we're looking for content that's created that actually drives and moves the sales numbers and the growth numbers that we're looking for. And so and so we pay attention to those things. We name the things that matter to us. We have really engaged dialogues around how to give guidance on the content creation while leaving enough space for the influencers to be really authentic and be themselves and try something new that we learned something new that we didn't know yet, right? So from a content creation perspective, we know that's an important part of what we're doing. We have a lot of pattern recognition around what's worked across past influencers, and still we learn new things every day, and the folks know what their audiences are looking for. So it's sort of, how do we measure that? We measure that the same way we'd measure creative efficacy on any advertising platform, but the mechanism for measurement is the same. The mechanism for sort of creation and innovation, you're inviting a partner into that process and giving them a decent amount of control in terms of what comes out the other end.
It's so interesting, right? Because as you said, with the influencer, they sometimes or often best work with a little bit of flexibility around how they're going to articulate, which is so different. Right? You don't give your advertising agency flexibility to what the ad looks like.
Oh, we are our advertising agency, so we give ourselves lots of flexibility.
Right. Fantastic.
So we can come back and talk about that in a minute, but but finish what you were...
Well, it's an interesting medium, and kind of the measurement of that is an interesting medium. What's your one or two pieces of advice to retailers who are listening about how to leverage influencers best? Is it that kind of work, measure, find the ones that align with your brand, and then figure out what are the signals that work best for them?
Know what you want, right? So for us, we want to partner with influencers to drive growth. We want to have the opportunity to expand our audience and meet new people and have them try our brands. And so we measure those outcomes. We measure the ability to create content and reach audiences that allow us to drive growth. And so those are the signals we're looking for. Right. And how that plays out is we try to create enough guardrails to make sure that we're telling true brand stories, and enough freedom to make sure that the influencers are able to create content that speaks to their audience, because that's what we're trying to do in the first place, right? We're trying to reach their audience. Yeah. So inviting them to help us reach them is sort of the whole game.
So you touched on being an advertiser yourself. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we have
business model.
It gets to the bigger business model. So a lot of businesses will outsource different aspects of their marketing. So there are people who outsource the creative production. So you could have an advertising agency that's creating the campaigns for you. We do that in-house. You also could advertise the media buying. You could have people who are out there buying your Facebook ads or buying your Google ads. We do that in-house. And so that was the work that I was leading at TechStyle for several recent years. But I think there's real juice that happens when you get all the nerds and all the artists focused on one goal, and you have enough of a feedback loop that you really just let the consumers decide, right? So, you do advertising, and if you've done your data work in the right way, where there's true signal about which ads are moving people relatively, and you use that feedback to do better creative and to buy ads in a better way, it sort of creates this constant. Not only is it less expensive because you're not paying overhead on an agency here and an agency there, it's faster because all the people are sort of in-house, and it's more true to the idea that we're here to service the customers, and so we let them decide. And if we're able to sort of deeply and truly, madly deeply, and look at what people are responding to, and do more of that creatively and from a media buying perspective. We think there's a lot of it's an internal virtuous loop. So we take all that pretty seriously. The idea of inviting influencers into that is sort of a cool extension of that work, because in the same way that we would go to our in-house creative team and say, hey, it looks like this is working, try something along these lines and let's see what happens. We're having really similar conversations with the many hundreds and thousands of influencers we're working with as they're creating content content with us and for us.
So you've taken a whole new tact on the art and science of retail. I love the way you said the nerds and the artists put them together. Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for sitting down. And
of course, it's my
great
pleasure.
Chatting with you.
Thank you.
And I wish you a great show. You're on a panel soon, so good luck with that. I'll be sticking around and listening to that as well. So thanks for being on The Voice of Retail.
Thank you.
Coco, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, we're together at the NRF's Big Show in New York City. You just rolled off a panel talking about influencers.
Yes.
And I couldn't help take the opportunity, fellow Canadian. Talk here in
I
New
never
York.
do this. I never do this without my PR, but he said fellow Canadian. I said, fine, that'd be great.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, for the listeners at home who might not know as much about you as perhaps I do, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I am New York-based, but I am born and raised out of Canada, Toronto. I am a model of now 15, going 16 years. And I have my own modeling agency called Nomad Management, as well as what we call model camp that started a year ago, where I pretty much teach models about the rights and the business side of modeling. So I've been known, of course, as a model who loves to pose and be eccentric in my craft, but also I've been known as a model that is outspoken, talks about change for the good for the industry, especially for underage models. So that's my life in a very quick nutshell.
Well, you're well respected for your tradecraft.
Thank
for
you.
sure. And we shared we didn't work together, but I was at Rogers Media, and you
Correct.
did great work with Flair. You're also an early adopter of social media.
Yes.
You broke some real barriers in terms of your use of social media. And I just wanted, for the retailers listening, the connection between retailers and models and social influencers and influencers is bigger now more than ever before.
Yes.
You could share a bit of your advice, your insights for retailers listening, how best to work with influencers. And you talked about authenticity. You talked about don't box me in too much. And you're hiring me for a reason. Are these some of the real insights that you might want to share?
Those are for sure two very important things, that you must do your homework just as much as the influencer or the model has to do their homework. And is this a brand that I want to align myself with?
Right.
And if so, if it does make sense, it'll work well for years to come. Instead of doing just this one-off sort of project, which is like this one campaign and do it, take a post, and off you go. I suggest longevity. So hopefully you can work with this person maybe a few seasons, a few years. There'll be a lot more impact than if you just decided to do it for one project.
Ad hoc tactical thing. Right?
All of that. So that plus, of course, like I said, being truthful, being honest, and also letting me have my voice. So, of course, I want to know the wording and, what exactly is it you're looking from this.
Sure.
I should then be able to respond in that email and give you how I think it should look, instead of the client or the company saying this is how it will be done. Because really, in all honesty, you were bringing this person on to hopefully get more, or if maybe different clients. Right. So trust that you've done the right thing, and now let the ball stay in their court for a second. They probably will help you out. So
as much work goes into it up front as you would advise. Find the person already that's a close fit to the brand. Maybe stretches it one way or another, brings a new audience. And then let you be you.
Yes. I mean, hopefully that is going to change whatever you're looking for. If it didn't, like some of the panelists said, then to try something else. There will be fails for sure, but you just have to do your homework instead of just what's trending, what's cool, and who should I follow or have on latch onto because everyone else is doing it. Most likely it's going to fail for you.
Last question. You talked about one of your metrics, and you're teaching this to models now, and is okay, what's the paycheck? That's a very base measurement. But then there's other measurements, like make sure you're not collapsing yourself into a brand that isolates you from other brands. But what other things are you looking for when you think about measuring who you take and how successful you're going to be?
Well, like I said, one thing very much so is I want to have longevity. So as a model, we used to just shoot one campaign and then hopefully maybe I'll get the next campaign, but it usually didn't happen. You'd work with another brand. Nowadays, especially if your followers realize you hold a bag. You love this brand. You work with this. You wear it a lot. Oh my goodness, you keep wearing it. I need to go check this bag out, this brand out. But if it was one campaign, they saw it for a minute and off you go.
Right.
So I want to be a spokesperson for somebody. And it doesn't even have to be in retail. We can just be talking about like saving the dolphins of the ocean, whatever it is that but that you're on brand talking about it. But that also you make sure you know your brand. So the brand knows what it stands for, but you now need to sit back and think about, do I know exactly what I stand for? At a time in my career, I was kind of floaty about things, figuring out like, well, this is something very important to me, this I don't really know. And people would say, hey, that makes no sense. Why aren't you doing a little more of this or less of that? And I agreed. So I actually would listen to my audience who said, that doesn't make much sense, and adjusted to that. So you have to realize we need to always be changing too.
Right.
So what could have maybe you said no 2 seasons ago might be something you're willing to try out now. So I'm always open mind, open book, try new things.
Yeah.
As the influencer, as the model, it will fail too. But next time I've learned from that and moving on. But the brands I'm looking to work with is one, just great people. The brand could be awesome, but the people I'm working with day in, day out, I want to have respect them, but also love them, and two, that we it just makes absolute sense. And authentic is the future. 2020 is about authenticity, I really think, but also making sure that everything we do is honest, because now we're playing in a role of VR and we're playing in roles of Photoshop, and we're messing with
even
bodies.
more so than ever
More
before,
so than
right?
ever.
I mean,
almost to
now
the point where we just don't even know what's real or not.
Yeah.
People can do it themselves now.
Yeah.
You can manipulate yourself to look whatever you want. So we really have to watch all of that, because our future generations are looking at that thinking that this is all normal and okay.
Right.
So all of those, if that made any sense.
No, listen.
There's a lot.
Thanks for the glimpse into your tradecraft and
thanks.
for stopping and chatting. And,
No worries.
Congratulations on your success, and best of luck in the future with everything you're working on.
Thank you.
And safe travels.
Thank you, and thanks for stopping chatting with me.
Manolo, welcome back to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's great to see you. We're here at the NRF Big Show. It's a big...
That's right.
Really
last day, too, so
yeah.
I'm glad we finally got to meet up.
Yeah, fantastic. So listen, let's start with a little bit about you. You've been on my podcast. I've been on yours before, but for the listeners who maybe didn't hear our first interview, tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Q Division as well.
So, yes, I am the managing director for Q Division, which is a division of Stratecash. So Q Division is the name. Division of is the other part. So we are a consulting group focused on retail tech. And so our job is to, attend all of these conferences and then bring it back to our clients and kind of synthesize it into some sort of, here's what's happening, here are the insights. And the other part is, we get called in, and if they're trying to solve certain challenges in their customer experience, or if we're looking at trying to create new ones. That's how we work.
So you're just off the plane from another massive conference, even bigger than this one, CES in Vegas.
That's right.
So I thought we'd start with what did you see in Vegas that was of any interest to you? What are the things that what would be that brief to your clients? Here's some interesting things we saw at the CES show this year.
Well, I think the biggest difference from the years before is the fact that there's more retailers attending, which was interesting because I was actually part of a retail tech track this year, which is also new. I mean, they had a smaller one last year, but this is, again, they actually had a full 2 days of events relating to retail experiences. And, before a lot of people were like, why are you going to CES? It's not like you're in consumer electronics. It's because, especially for retailers, they're looking for how consumer behavior is going to evolve. What are the expectations that are being set? Because if you think about, most of this stuff is for your house. How will you live in your house? Are you going to have a smart home that does everything for you? Or you start getting used to, or you start to expect the fact that you can just do these things in your day-to-day life. When I go outside to go shopping, aside from e-commerce, and when you go to the physical store, you will have the same expectations or similar ones on how your transaction is going to happen.
So would your advice to retailers listening be send your ops people, your tech people, or your marketing people if you're going to think about going to CES?
I actually think it is more marketing focused because it's the experience side. I think or tech maybe, ops not so much.
Yep.
I think there would be some interest maybe from, usually it's the C-level that goes. And they get the special tours and they walk around, but they also get the insights on okay, soon people will have monitors in their clothes. Like this, the one area that I saw was growing as of last year was health and wellness, and then the sleep tech area was massive. And it has to do with the fact that everyone's sleep deprived, I guess. And there's better ways to monitor your sleep, track the patterns, but they had things that were, it's not like wearables like an Apple Watch, it's clothes with sensors stitched in that will track your breathing, your sleep cycles. They even have fall detection in there. But if you think about that, and then the fact that you'll be able to control these variables up to that level or understand what's happening, I think you pivot that to, when I go shopping, you want to have that kind of, you know me, I expect you to personalize how you talk to me. Don't give me something or share something with me that I won't be interested in. And maybe help me discover things that I normally wouldn't look for myself.
Right.
But because you know all the things about me, you can kind of help me make.
So kind of next generation wearable tech, right?
Yeah.
Because as you said, you've got an Apple Watch. I have one. It's got fall detection. It's great, but it's something you got to put on, something you got to charge.
Yep.
So this is kind of woven in figuratively and literally into your day-to-day life and your apparel.
Yep.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
And so that gets into the IoT part of life.
Yeah.
And so as we do things like our cars become more autonomous, again, the trend of our behavior is we'll expect more from the things that are around us as we have it collect data on us.
Right.
And so that should drive new types of shopping experiences, which is, I think, what retailers
Interesting.
are trying to
Because I never had conceived of CES. I've never been.
Yeah.
But
You should go.
As I'm listening to you, I think I'm going to go next year,
Yeah.
actually. So interesting. So let's pivot to NRF Big Show, which is, really the home of operators and tech and some marketers. What are you seeing? What are you hearing on the floor? What's interesting? I'm seeing a lot of digital shelf. I'm seeing in your booth some great tech around digital display that's really taking it to the next level, and other themes that you're seeing at the show.
I think I see a lot less of blockchain this year. Like I always look at what differences are between the 2 years or the 1 year. Definitely not much blockchain, which it's you figured that was going to happen. It's one of those hype cycles.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of more mature computer vision solutions. Everybody now has their own version of Amazon Go, but they're doing it in a much, I'd say, they're trying to make it more economical and less tech dependent.
Yep.
So they're relying more on the vision side than sensors. There's thousands of sensors in one of those sensors. So
at least a little bit less eye-watering from a capital perspective.
Exactly, right? And then tech supports perspective. So you see a lot of those. I also saw a few more micro warehousing solutions out there that are turning into more retail as a service. And I think it has to do with the demand for speed in delivery. So we're getting to the point where, remember, it was 1 day delivery last year was, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now it's, if you can't do 2-hour delivery, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right.
So, and retailers have to figure out, are going to focus on developing my own logistics platform, or can I go do retail as a service, which I think is a smarter way because they'll make it close to the business.
Yeah.
So there are...
Well, it's certainly less capital intensive, right?
Exactly.
And there's two schools of thought, right? The more capital you put into a warehouse, the more efficient it is. The more efficient the pick is. But you've got to make some big bets.
Right. And then you're right. That the pick is another piece of that micro warehousing. They're using a lot more robots, smaller, and ways to do things, to be more personalized in these picks. It's not just like a box. It's I'm making it up, but it'll be like 2 pencils, a lipstick, and a brush and a box.
Yeah.
And so to do that and deliver that in 2 hours, it's not a person. There's no way. And then you're in an urban center like New York. Where are you going to put this thing?
And New York is I was reading some numbers. New York's 1.6 million deliveries a day.
Yep.
I mean, at some point, this is beyond kind of the conference and tech. At some point, and I think that point is almost here for New York, the city starts to collapse based on this new, just the people on the road, the packages on the sidewalk. And I think where it's relevant to us is I'm starting to see it in stores with BOPAs.
Yes.
Stores were not purpose-built to be pickup zones.
Yep.
So, and these things are both growing.
Exactly.
Right? And so it's beyond kind of our conversation around tech, but maybe there's, as retailers think about putting the tech in the neighborhoods, because then that's where the product is.
Yep.
it'll be interesting challenges about the practical challenges of just congestion, because you feel it here in New York City, right?
Yeah.
You feel it every day.
And to your point, the stores are not designed for go into a place that's not in the way and pick up your stuff. You can't just put a bunch of lockers in. So there are more of those solutions that are more like bolt-on solutions just for the last mile fulfillment, which is, I saw one that was using laser-guided dots and computer vision to help when you come in. You basically come into this unit, it's like a self-contained unit, and you scan your mobile barcode, and then this little red dot will point at where your package is in the room.
Oh, like a pick-to-light system in a warehouse, right?
It's amazing.
Come on, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So they're taking a pick-to-light in the warehouse
and they're using the Lozier shelves, which is like what every warehouse has. It's the most low impact install I've ever seen.
I'm waiting to see then the Amazon-style automated robots just bring you the product then, you know,
right?
They're zipping around.
Exactly.
It's like a dystopian universe, right? You never see anybody.
Yeah, well, at least the thing I didn't see a lot of now is a lot of those pepper robots. No more of these greeters and things like that. Finally figured out that's not time for that yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, interesting. So when we're thinking about 2020, I'm going to ask you a question. Finish this sentence question. 2020 will be the year of what in retail tech?
I think it'll be the year that people start to expect more personalization from a human standpoint in the way things are done at the transaction.
Right.
What I mean by that is, even with bots today, they're starting. I don't know if this is the right way, but I'm starting to see more humanized ways of switching in between a bot and a person during the chat function seamlessly. So
those human monitors, kind of like self-checkout, right? Somebody's always there.
Exactly, but they'll flip over and you won't even know. To a certain extent, it's kind of behind the scenes. Putting faces, digital human avatars to be the face of the chatbot. People seem to want more human connection, and so I think there's this part of, I don't use to deliver the box to my house. I want a little bit more high touch. I think that's what we'll be looking at. I mean, that's the only, and then maybe 15-minute delivery, which I think that's the only where we can go.
Teleportation, 2021.
Or anticipate that I need it before I even buy it. That's right.
Well, Amazon's got a patent for that, right? Anticipatory retail. Now, in the patent that was filed years ago, it was just like, could we get it to the closest warehouse thinking what Manola's going to order based on what Manola's ordered 100 times before? But I think it's going to go to the next level where they're just going to ship it to your house.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
If you're one of the 105, 110 million U.S. Prime members, they've got a pretty good sense of what you're looking for next for some things.
Yeah.
And then how hard? Yeah, let's just give it to him and see if he returns it or not. I think that's not far from happening.
It's gonna be a very interesting time.
Well, listen, thanks for joining me again on the Voice of Retail. It's always fun to catch up and let's connect again and keep track of how 2020 is rolling out.
All right, we'll do this again next year.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thanks to Laura, Coco, and Manola for being my guests in this episode. Now, let's hit the highlights of the retail news in Canada around the world with retail this week for the week of February 3rd, 2020. Kicking us off, article on CBC or from CBC. Grocery delivery war is expected to create boom in online food shopping. Lots of activity. We've been talking about that in the podcast for a while. Some quotes here from Sylvain Charlebois, who's been on the podcast a couple of times, a real go-to expert in the category in this article talking about how convenience is so important, and there's been so many investments and so many things aligning together. So, for example, Sobeys is going to be launching the Voila this year, their partnership with Ocado. You got Metro, you've got Longo's with Grocery Gateway, you've got a whole bunch of things coming all together to make this actually a really 2020, 2021, a really exciting jumpstart or kickstart again to online grocery delivery, whether it's online and particularly home delivery. I think it'll be a bigger year for home delivery. And just thinking about that, shout out to Professor Doug Snetzinger from U of T Rotman Business School. Doug was my professor when I did my MBA there and invited me tonight to guest lecture in his course on consumer behavior. And we had a great time. We had a question from great group of folks talking about one of the things they're talking about is grocery and what is going to happen and why aren't more people adopting it. And it's a great question because, as Sylvana says, really, if you're looking for convenience, it's a pretty great way to go. So we'll be keeping our close eye on that. And thanks again to Professor Doug for inviting me down, a guest lecture, just a pile of fun at U of T Rotman School of Business tonight. From CTV, businesses hold summit in Winnipeg to deal with rise in thefts. Congratulations out to John Graham, our Retail Council of Canada's Director of Government Relations in the Prairies. He's done a fantastic job bringing stakeholders together, retailers and government together, and really highlighting the crime and the nature of the crime that's going on in the Prairies, but certainly not limited by any means there. It's very dangerous. It puts consumers and employees at risk. And we've seen a real uptake on the escalation of violence. So John doing a great job there, bringing people together and certainly getting the attention of the right people in government who are there and really getting ready to act. I think it's a model that will roll itself across Canada. As it expands from Globe and Mail, Canadian lingerie brand NYX is in the news. Joanna's doing a great job of building that brand. It's a behemoth. Congratulations to her. The article just goes into the shortcomings, so to speak, of L Brands and Victoria's Secret compared to, from a style at least, from former positioning for Victoria's Secret. If you haven't had the opportunity, by the way, it's not linked in here. I just kind of didn't make the final cut, but there's a long, pretty biting article in New York Times on Victoria's Secret and some of the activities that's been going on over the years. So check that out if you're interested in getting a bit more backstory. From the Globe and Mail, Montreal's battle over reasons why the booming city is plagued by empty storefronts. Not the first time we've had this type of article or had this kind of discussion in Retail This Week or on the podcast. Everything from, there's basically about 15% is quoted in this article. Street-level retail space sitting empty. Is it taxes, lack of parking, changing consumer habits? So something to keep a close eye on. There in Montreal. That's from the Globe and Mail. Indigo has an online gifting platform, Thoughtful, and they're going to be selling cannabis accessories. So that from the National Post. So chosen by 48 North, which is an LP, signed a curation partnership with Thoughtful. So good luck to them. Congratulations for Indigo in entering that space. They put out some results that are pretty good today. I saw just after the wire, so to speak, close of the wire of Retail This Week. So do check those out. Congratulations to Indigo doing both a mix of sales growth and cost cutting to take on that business. In videos, by the way, Casper comes to market. Their IPO finally hits the IPO today, went public, and shares surged 30% in their market debuts. Congratulations to them. There's an interview here with Casper's CEO. And so check that out. There's also an interview for New Brunswick talking about plastic bags. A great interview with local home hardware, actually, who had already made that move. Vancouver retailers fear coronavirus fallout. This is in Business in Vancouver. Nothing funny about it, of course. Quoting David Gray, our friend David Ian Gray, talking about what's the impact on retail over and above, of course, our concern for the people involved. It's early days, and hopefully that will be the end of it. But looking back to our experience with SARS, we know what kind of impact that can have on retail, and from this perspective, we'll keep a close eye on that. Let's see what else. Let's move on to international retail. What have we got? Macy's announces they're closing 125 stores, cutting 2,000 corporate jobs, as Steve Dennis says. I'm cutting to grow. Not maybe the best strategy, but we'll see. We wish him the best of luck. There's lots of news about that. It certainly puts more mall owners in a tough spot as they close 125 stores, which is beyond what they announced in the usual kind of cull of stores, it seems. So we'll see. Their same-store sales on owned plus licensed brands are forecast to be down 1% to flat for the next quarter. Earth Fair, shutter all stores. So unfortunately, this is a grocery concept store, Earth Fair. So it's interesting because the standalone stores that are in natural goods are not doing well, but the category itself is doing very well. So I guess the lesson learned there is that it's been picked up by the major retailers, and the small indies who maybe, deserve a lot of credit for starting it, are really starting to struggle as single destination points for consumers. Article from the Robin Report, 2019 Retailing, the Best and Worst Times. I put this in because it's actually Mark Cohn who wrote it, and he was, for those, if that name reminds anyone, he was president and CEO of Sears Canada. He's now a professor and analyst. It's really great, very well-written article. No bolts of inspiration, but it really does nicely pull together a lot of thoughts that we've been talking about, certainly. Forever 21 just got bought by Brookfield Properties, Simon Property Group, so some of the mall owners and the brand management, Authentic Brands Group, are buying Forever 21 for $81 million. I guess they think they can make a go of it somehow. I guess, it's fair to say that the fast fashion category still has legs to it, still has room for sure, and that Forever 21 was mostly a story of uncontrolled and undisciplined growth. So I guess, these pretty savvy operators figure they can make a go of it. So the category isn't dead and there's still room. Interesting question. Can Forever 21 come back? After going through what it's gone through from a brand perspective, can brands be pulled back from the edge? By the way, stay tuned for next week's episode. I interviewed Joe Jackman, who's one of the questions I interviewed Joe. He just released a great new book. We'll be talking all about it. But one of the questions I asked him in the interview is, can brands come back? Is there a point of no return for brands? So stay tuned for his answer to that question. Sephora opens 100 stores in 2020. This from CNBC. So going in the opposite direction, right? Macy's closed 125. Sephora opens 100. The interesting thing here is they're not opening them in malls. That's interesting. Off-mall locations. Not the first, of course, time that Sephora's opened a non-mall-based location, but all 100 stores are going to be non-mall-based locations. So that's pretty interesting. What else have we got? Let's go to indies. A good week for news for indies. A bookshop in Canada puts up kittens for adoption as you read books. It's a really nice story, actually. The store in Halifax the kittens are from Southpaw Conservation Rescue Group, and you go in and read a book, and all these kittens are wandering around, and you can take one home and make it what do they call it, a forever home, as the pet folks would say. So that's a nice story there, combining experience and books and kittens. Well, that's a pretty fun mix. The race for Canadian cannabis retail dominance is on. This from Technical 420. Again, it covers a lot of the retailers we've talked about and folks that I've interviewed, from Canna Cabana to High Tide, and just talks about, it's a nice kind of summary article, so I put it in, just talks an overview of some of the big players and how they are going to market and Spirit Leaf and all these great retailers. And so, now it starts to get interesting, right? They all start to hit critical mass, start to expand. So we wish them best luck. We'll be watching closely. What else? Caught on cannabis. Speaking of cannabis, armed men flee with garbage bags full of pot in cannabis store robbery. So, back to this loss prevention, back to this risk. This is in Alberta. I think the challenge here is, you've got the national, federal legislation around having the windows being fairly opaque or covered means you can't see inside. So, if you read through the story from CTV Edmonton, talks about, these characters, criminals were in the store for like 15 minutes. Quite traumatic if you're in the middle of all that, whether you have a panic button or not. So it just means more expense for retailers who have to install that kind of more rapid response and monitoring. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Let's see. From shopping, digital, and stores, go east. Shopping center redevelopment in Maritimes. That from Canadian Retailer Magazines focuses on the Micmac Mall in Dartmouth, which is $55 million in renovations and investments over from landlord Ivanhoe Cambridge. The great article on they changed the way you buy basics. New York Times talks about Dollar Shave Club, Warby Parker, and other billion-dollar companies. Dollar Shave Club was sold for $1 billion, and it just really chronicles the rise that these companies have had and how they've reflected and responded so well to customer changing buying patterns. Strategy behind Amazon getting back into mall pop-up stores. It's a fun piece in Forbes Fun, so to speak, because he talks about it in the way of chess. And he says these things are just pawns, and really they're nothing fancy. They're kind of innocuous, but they're really a slow tactical play. I'm quoting here, to eat away at whatever scraps upon which mall-based retailer still feeds. What else? Best Buy. This from Retail Insider, Craig Patterson's Retail Insider. He's been on the podcast a couple of times, author of the Shopping Center Report. Best Buy Canada continues experience store concept expansion. So they've opened up their first store in 5 years. And of course, Best Buy came to Canada independently, bought Future Shop, merged those two brands, so really had more stores than they needed, and finally now are starting to grow some stores. Second-hand clothing, long on hype, short on impact for mall retailers. So this is that, we talk about sustainability and the whole re-commerce as it's known. Just an article that kind of levels and says, listen, we'll see how it all works out in the long run. All right, well, that's our episode. That's a wrap of this edition of The Voice of Retail. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc. You can learn more about me on www.emmyleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great week.